A Short History of the United States by Edward Channing. Chapter 1. The European Discovery of America. Leif Ericson discovers America in the year 1000. In our early childhood, many of us learned to repeat the lines, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. We thought he was the first European to visit America, but nearly 500 years before his time, Leif Ericson had discovered the New World. He was a Northman and the son of Eric the Red. Eric had already founded a colony in Greenland, and Leif sailed from Norway to make him a visit. This was the year 1000. Day after day, Leif and his men were tossed about on the sea until they reached an unknown land where they found many grapevines. They called it Vinland, or Wineland. They then sailed northward and reached Greenland in safety. Precisely where Vinland was is not known, but it certainly was part of North America. Leif Ericson, the Northman, was therefore the real discoverer of America. 2. Early European travelers. The people of Europe knew more of the lands of Asia than they knew of Vinland. For hundreds of years, missionaries, traders, and travelers visited the Far East. They brought back to Europe silks and spices and ornaments of gold and silver. They told marvelous tales of rich lands and great princes. One of these travelers was a Venetian named Marco Polo. He told of Cathay, or China, and of Cipango, or Japan. This last country was an island. Its king was so rich that even the floors of his palaces were pure gold. Suddenly, the Turks conquered the lands between Europe and the Golden East. They put an end to this trading and traveling. New ways to India, China, and Japan must be found. 3. Early Portuguese sailors. One way to the east seemed to be around the southern end of Africa, if it should turn out that there was a southern end to that dark continent. In 1487, Portuguese seamen sailed around the southern tip of Africa and, returning home, called that point the Cape of Storms. But the King of Portugal thought that now there was good hope of reaching India by sea, so he changed the name to Cape of Good Hope. 10 years later, a brave Portuguese sailor, Vasco da Gama, actually reached India by the Cape of Good Hope and returned safely to Portugal, 1497. 4. Columbus. Meantime, Christopher Columbus, an Italian, had returned from an even more startling voyage. From what he had read, and from what other men had told him, he had come to believe that the earth was round. If this were really true, Cipango and Cathay were west of Europe, as well as east of Europe. Columbus also believed that the earth was very much smaller than it really is, and that Cipango was only 3,000 miles west of Spain. For a time, people laughed at the idea of sailing westward to Cipango and Cathay, but at length Columbus secured enough money to fit out a little fleet. 5. The Voyage, 1492. Columbus left Spain in August 1492, and, refitting at the Canaries, sailed westward into the Sea of Darkness. At 10 o'clock in the evening of October 20th, 1492, looking out into the night, he saw a light in the distance. The fleet was soon stopped. When day broke, there, sure enough, was land. A boat was lowered, and Columbus, going ashore, took possession of the new land for Ferdinand and Isabella, King and Queen of Aragon and Castile. The natives came to see the discoverers. They were reddish in color and interested in Columbus, for were they not inhabitants of the Far East? So he called them Indians. 6. The Indians and the Indies. These Indians were not at all like those wonderful people of Cathay and Cipango whom Marco Polo had described. Instead of wearing clothes of silk and of gold embroidered satin, these people wore no clothes of any kind. But it was plain enough that the island they had found was not Cipango. It was probably some island off the coast of Cipango. So on Columbus sailed and discovered Cuba. He was certain that Cuba was a part of the mainland of Asia, for the Indians kept saying Cubanaquan. Columbus thought that this was their way of pronouncing Kublai Khan, the name of a mighty eastern ruler, so he sent 2 messengers with a letter to that powerful monarch. Returning to Spain, Columbus was welcomed as a great admiral. He made 3 other voyages to America, but he never came within sight of the mainland of the United States. 7. John Cabot, 1497. While Columbus explored the West Indies, another Italian sailed across the Sea of Darkness farther north. His name was John Cabot, and he sailed with a license from Henry VII of England, the first of the Tudor kings. Setting boldly forth from Bristol, England, he crossed the North Atlantic and reached the coast of America north of Nova Scotia. Like Columbus, he thought that he had found the country of the Great Khan. Upon his discovery, English kings based their claim to the right to colonize North America. 8. The naming of America. Many other explorers also visited the newfound lands. Among these was an Italian named Americus Vespucci. Precisely where he went is not clear, but it is clear that he wrote accounts of his voyages, which were printed and read by many persons. In these accounts he said that what we call South America was not a part of Asia, so he named it the New World. Columbus all the time was declaring that the lands he found were a part of Asia. It was natural, therefore, that people in thinking of the New World should think of Americus Vespucci. Before long, someone even suggested that the New World should be named America in his honor. This was done, and when it became certain that the other lands were not parts of Asia, the name America was given to them also, until the whole continent came to be called America. 9. Balboa and Magellan, 1513-1520. Balboa was a Spaniard who came to San Domingo to seek his fortune. He became a pauper and fled away from those to whom he owed money. After long wanderings he found himself on a high mountain in the center of the Isthmus of Panama. To the southward sparkled the waters of a new sea. He called it the South Sea. Wading into it waist deep, he waved his sword in the air and took possession of it for his royal master, the King of Spain. This was in 1513. 7 years later, in 1520, Magellan, a Portuguese seaman in the service of the Spanish king, sailed through the Straits of Magellan and entered the same great ocean which he called the Pacific. Thence, northward and westward, he sailed day after day, week after week, and month after month, until he reached the Philippine Islands. The natives killed Magellan, but one of his vessels found her way back to Spain around the Cape of Good Hope.